So when we're taught about the tipi has very special meaning, but that represents our physical body and our spiritual body. Michoap doesn't just mean tipi. Originally it was called home. We see even when we're putting it up, each pole represents a stages in life. And those first 3 poles represent the foundation. Pole number 1, obedience. The very first thing that we focus on with children is obedience. Second teaching, respect. With respect, it begins with you. You need to start respecting yourself. So that's one of our second foundations, along with obedience. Number 1 thing they must learn once they do learn about respect, learn about humility. Right from being the little one, if they learn obedience, respect, we need to make sure we teach them humility along with that, or it's going to close the door to the other teachings. So again, all these teachings are vital early for the foundations. So now I have a foundation. The next part is really practical. Before you can even know where to lash the foundation together, you need to know where you're going to lash them, because that's where my poles are going to stick out. Pole, the same. So now I know that's where I lash those together. So with our northern style, we have 13 poles. And then our control flaps and our lifting pole. So these first 3 poles represent youth and those 3 teachings that we're supposed to focus on with children. So we used to just do the lashing on the foundations and then put our poles around it. But after working with Herman, I do it plain style now, where we keep our rope long. We lash it, but we leave this long because it's going to be very important later on. And I've already done something wrong with my poles. So I need to move that on top so that when I lift those poles, they're going to hold this middle one, and that middle one will keep them steady. So this one goes on top. So simple lashings. If you're doing this, especially in a school, you probably want to use a little 6-foot teepee like this. Too tight. Yeah. Butter. This represents children and the stage that children are in. The next 3 poles will represent adolescents or teens. I want to invite you up to grab one of the remaining poles that you're comfortable talking about. And I'll start off with my teachings around that teaching, and then you can talk a little bit about your bringing up and what you were taught about one of those teachings. Kids, when you actually give them a pole and they're holding, it feels very much honoring to them. Ladies, I know you have some teachings within you. Come up and grab a pole. Just don't start having a fight over it. When we've already learned humility, respect, and obedience, we're starting to gain that sense of self. So as we become adolescents or teenagers, that's when we try and teach children about, first of all, love. And yesterday we talked about it a little where just like respect, alongside respect with the children, you need to first learn to love yourself. Especially our teenagers, they do not love themselves. So we're taught by our elders that with our teenagers, really focus on building that ability to love themselves. With adolescents, what do you think they focus on? They focus on finding a girlfriend or boyfriend and falling in love. This love is all about them, and there's nothing selfish about that. We've been taught that if you respect yourself or if you love yourself, you're being selfish. No, absolutely not. And you really don't truly love the people around you until you learn how to love yourself. Before we move on to the next teaching, I'm going to ask Herman to come up, lay our pole, and talk a little bit about the pole placements as we're moving from here.
Tipi and your Tipi poles. You will never go backwards in time. As Native people, we don't go backwards in time. I don't think anybody does in their culture by itself. You know, you want to measure it once it's laid down already.
Happiness? So happiness is the next pole. So the next one would have been...
You have to go right around, man.
Yeah, and I put the last one so it shouldn't slide. And
drop it in the hole. What you want to do is you want to follow this guy and you want to drop it here. And she come from down south.
yeah, southeast. So it must be because there's mostly women here decided.
So this is where the cowboy comes. And this rope, I always talk about this rope because this is the one that binds, like Jason said, this is the one that binds all the nations together and makes that basket up there. And once you fill that basket with all nations, because nobody's disrespected and nobody's turned back from a teepee.
Once we've learned to love ourselves, happiness comes natural. Because if you love yourself, you're happy. Like, how do you teach happiness? Our next and last teaching with our youth, our adolescents, is faith. Self, us. This is us. So when we're thinking about faith, it does not entirely relate to a higher power or any power other than the power to believe in yourself. So we've taught them love. Through that, they've gotten happiness. Now we need to empower them by building faith in themselves and having that faith. And you'll see that once we start moving into adulthood, that's when we start to go outside of ourselves. But for right now, they need to gain that faith in themselves. We just finished our teen years and we're moving into adulthood. And when we are entering adulthood, our elders teach us that the first thing we need to focus on is family. To be grateful for what they had growing up and to constantly remind them of that. About family, I did not forget about my kids and my wife and my family. Absolutely not. but I enclosed my miqwap to include just my children and my wife. And I pushed everybody else out. We've got to, in early adulthood, make sure that young adults understand the importance of keeping that family close and that structure close. Our first best friends, those were our siblings. When traditionally the family bonds were so tight so that our communities were basically groups of families. Because of those bonds between cousins, first cousins, and the importance we put on families, difficult concept to get through to an adult who's so focused on starting their own family and just building their own miqwap. But it's vital that we continue to remind them about their first best friends and to never forget about them. To re-strengthen those family bonds, they need to learn about sharing. Sharing their gifts, sharing their life experience, sharing what they went through as they were learning the other teachings behind them, but also the physical act of sharing and being able to share your material wealth with those around you and share especially your gifts, not just the material gifts and the physical gifts, but share your spiritual gifts as well. And the last thing we learn about in adulthood before we're able to move on is hope. And almost like faith, but so optimistic faith, I guess, is being hopeful, as being believing, putting belief in that everything's gonna be okay. Yeah. Yeah. So optimistic faith is hope. As we reach the end of adulthood and we start to enter that phase of becoming elders, it relates to not giving up on yourself. So it's all about, before we can enter into that elder stage, it's all about renewing your hope in yourself and renewing the hope that tomorrow is going to be okay. Because you've just finished draining your entire well-being through adulthood. You've shared everything. You've worked hard. You've been giving and giving and giving throughout adulthood. And that's the time when you're starting to, okay, it's time to step back again, start to look at yourself again. How do we show them that there is hope for tomorrow? You ground them in today. Look, you've made it through today. You made it through yesterday. You made it through today. Why would you think tomorrow is going to be any different? Have the next stage in our last 3 poles. The first one, once we enter that elder stage, is cleanliness. That's really what those teachings are with cleanliness. It has to do with, like you guys just said, a clean conscience. Clearing your conscience of guilt, anything you might have did throughout any of the other stages, even way back to, every one of you has something you regret right back to even when you were in childhood stage. With elders, they need to be shown how to let that go. How do we do that? As adults, we have that power to totally put somebody elderly at ease just by one small act, especially with our parents or our siblings, by simply going up to them and tell them we forgive them So we need to help our elders to clear their conscience and to look at cleanliness within. Once we've learned to cleanse ourselves, and this would come naturally, would be wakohton. Once again renewing our connections, our kinships, and building those bonds between and building that kinship and recognizing people that you've forgotten about your entire adult life. Just coming back and remembering and building those kinship connections. And of course, the last stage we go through thankfulness. After we've made those kinship connections again, it's a time to be thankful and start to reflect. The latter end of our lives, our elders start to reflect on the whole experience through life. And then through that, they start to be thankful when they start to think, you know what? It could have been worse. I made it to here. I've got 30 great-grandchildren or whatever have you. So much to be thankful for. But that's the time when our elders are back to thinking about themselves and just being thankful for everything. So that brings us to the last pole. And now, once we've got to the last pole, so this pole here is called the lifting pole, where the 13 poles we have up right now represent the 13 moons, but our lifting pole symbolizes reaching balance.
You see what I'm doing? Just kind of bring it in here like this, fold it in here. Then. Make sure you guys when you end up over here, you end up with like this. Then you fold your tipi right. Okay.
So that's actually how you would do it.
When you put it away, and your 16 footers, your 18 footers, your 10 footers. When I make drums, it's the same things. I don't like looking. Okay. To the end, I usually leave about 4 inches.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, once you fasten it down there, now bring this flap over here. I'll bring this tongue over here so it never never slides. Okay, and then you just tie it. Pull this tight there because. It's okay. So when we stand it up, two of you will bring it up to me. So it's 16 foot deep. We back to over here. You grab the stand over here. You grab the stand over here. You set that down right in there. And where's your door? To have 14 pegs. So what happens is, years ago,
Sarah, come on your shoulder.
so they'll always be the smallest person. So here there should have been 14 pegs. There's 14 pegs. There's all meanings, all the pegs also. Like this is the one that paid. You gathered all your knowledge and everything. Now you got it tight. All right.
All right. So now we see with that lifting pole, it's supposed to symbolize balance. And all of those teachings we gain through life are inside Mi'kwap. And so right now this is Aisinyu. It's a person. And they're right, because if we just look inside of that, all of those teachings, the 13 representation of the 13 moons, each one with a teaching, those are all the things we learn throughout life. And the covering is finding that balance so that everything is within that mikwap, within that tipi. So this is when we learn to self-regulate, because with our control flaps, practically in the tipi, they control the amount of heat, the amount of smoke that we have in the tipi, practically. Especially throughout adulthood, our control flaps are wide open because we are just sharing energy, giving, sharing love, sharing teachings. But we're just sharing. Our control flaps are open. We are taught that our inner energy or our fire inside our tipi, we need to be careful and regulate it. So at times when the fire is big and we have a lot of love and a lot of us to give out, then our tipi flaps are open and we're giving. But when we start to feel we're running out of energy, we're running out of love, we need to close and start to focus on us again until that energy builds up within us. So if we were in a teepee, if the fire started to go down, I would close the flaps. At any stage, you need to know how to operate those control flaps. Close them when you feel drained and take that time to yourself, that time to work on you. That's when we hear people say, work on you. It's not selfish. It's you protecting yourself. It's you taking care of yourself. Absolutely not selfish. Go work on you. Build up your energy. Once your energy is high enough, you might open those flaps a little to help somebody or help close friends. And then maybe close again, build your energy. You need to know how to regulate to when you can share fully or to when you shouldn't share at all. But always control your mikwap and take care. This is you. All of the teachings you have and that fire that's in there. So that is the TP teachings as it was taught to me. So like I said, with everything on here, I teach it exactly as it was taught to me. I'll teach it in that manner probably until I'm in that last stage of my TP.